This is so awesome. Good morning. What you guys don't realize is that we are now live on Facebook and YouTube. It is happening. So anybody that's watching online, welcome. We're glad that you're here. This is brand new. For you guys that are sitting here in the room, I want you to know that in the next week or two, if you don't respond, we'll probably get a camera here and it's going to point at you also, and it'll be a picture in a picture so that people online can see the mass of people that are in here to listen. And so this whole business of starting on time is, we are pushing the limit on what we know how to do here. And so hopefully in the weeks that come, it will get better. But for any of you that are watching online, we are so glad that you are here, because I think that what we're going to talk about is really important. Over the past 18 months, one of the things that we have learned, and by we, I mean people that are in various parts of social service, whether it's in the church or in the schools or in counseling centers or wherever it happens to be. This was a really, really difficult last 18 months on family life. People were trapped. They had to figure out if they even liked the people that they were living with in their homes. They couldn't go to work. They couldn't escape. There are a lot of people that get up in the morning, go to work because that is their safe place. There are people that have to go to work even though it's unsafe. It was a mess. It was really a mess. I did a lot of reading over the last year and a half or so about children who were trapped at home with their abusive parents. School was their safe place. School was the place where they got to get away from what was bad, at least for 8 or 10 hours a day. With the COVID shutdown, it wasn't that way. They were forced back into their homes where it was not safe. Now, that is not everybody. I realize that. But that happened. Marriages took a hit because of finances, because of communication problems. Marriages took a hit because of being stuck with their kids. I think that there are a lot of families that figured out during this past year that they weren't necessarily very fond of their own children. And it created a mess. At a minimum, we ended up with about 18 months of completely turned upside down routines. And I found that through all of this, I had more conversations about people's marriages than probably anything else that I had to deal with in terms of my own personal counseling. And so that's why we're going to do this. We're going to do this for 5 weeks together. I hope it works. I hope the invitation for you that are online watching, by the way, you that came in while I was speaking, we are live on Facebook and on YouTube right now, because there are people I know who are watching at home. Maybe people who feel uncomfortable to come in and be around other people, to talk about this kind of a subject. And so we will do this. It will be live streamed each week. We'll start right on time because that's the kind of the syncing that we have to do with people that are watching, that it goes online, and we don't want them to stare at a blank screen for 10 minutes waiting for us to get our act together. So here's the deal. I don't think there is a single one of you here in the building that gets thrilled at the idea that if you say something out loud, it's going to be broadcast to India. And so you may be inclined to just sit there and say nothing. I hope that is not true. I hope that we are able to have the same kind of give and take that we ordinarily would when I ask questions, and you have something to say. Please do that. And another thing that I would like to encourage all of you to do, whether you are watching online or you are here, is that every week there are things that we put on Facebook, social media posts that are designed to be shared. And so in talking with people, it's really pretty funny. I've realized that I know very few people that willingly admit that they spend time on Facebook. Most people that I talk to go, I'm hardly ever on there. I don't think you're always telling the truth on that. So, you don't have to admit publicly that you go onto Facebook. But if you happen to frequent it every now and then with a picture or a comment, or you are stalking other people, trying to do it without being noticed, you're noticed, by the way. I'd like you to take some of the social media posts that we put on Facebook and share them on your Facebook newsfeed. Just take it from the North Point site and put it onto yours, and invite any of your friends to join us for the next 4 weeks. Part of that is just because it is, if there are people that are struggling in their marriages and in their family life, my guess is they would like to have a friend. And maybe they don't want to say it out loud, but they certainly would welcome it by seeing it online, where it can be anonymous. But you need to invite them. Or better yet, you could invite them to join us here at 9 o'clock on Sunday mornings. It would be a way to extend friendship to people who may need friendship during a difficult time. So make sure you advertise on Facebook. It's there for you. You just click, it's shareable, take it and drop it in on yours. It'll show up in your newsfeed and people will see it. You could even write something along with it that says, hey, join us next Sunday at 9. And it's a pretty simple thing to do. My challenge to all of you that are watching or who are here today is this is an opportunity for you to show that you care. This is a way for you to obey Jesus when he says the greatest command is to love God and to love others. The simplest way that we can love others is to extend an offer to them to join in on something that might be good for them. Okay? So try it. Another thing that'll happen here for both you who are watching online and here is that at about 9:20 today, if you have your phone and it's there in front of you, on the North Point family page on Facebook, there is a post that will appear at 9:20, at least if I scheduled it right. It should show up there, and it will include some of the questions that I'm going to pose today. It will be there for you so that you could, if you wanted to, go back with your spouse and use some of these questions as conversation points. It will be there for you to look at. If you don't use Facebook, if you are not there, it will also be sent to you by email later today. So it will be there also. So you'll have it. Take a risk. This whole thing is new, and it is new for me also, and we'll see how this goes. Wanda and I have been married for 46 years. That means that as I look in this room, we have been married more than almost everybody. Doug, how many years have you been married?
51 and Cinda.
Doug and Cinda have been married 51 years this year, this coming year. Gary, how many years have you and Pam been married?
Don't ask me.
Okay, it's a memory thing. I get it. All right. You've been married a long time also. But I'm not sure if just being married that long qualifies me to give you advice. Really, it doesn't. But I think that through our life together, Wanda's and mine, we have faced a lot of different things in our marriage. And we are still here. And we are still together. And there's great value in that. And so over the next 5 weeks, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you various bits of information that we have learned along the way. If you hear something that I say and you go, no, not for us, that does not hurt my feelings at all. If you hear of something that I recommend and you go, I don't think I can do that. That's not me. That's not my personality to do that. Well, my challenge to you would be, don't knock it until you try it. Don't say it's wrong until you've given it a shot. Some things will be big. Some things will be really tiny that I offer to you. By the way, this class for 5 weeks, you don't even have to be married to be here. This is just a good thing to think about even before you would get married. So if you all have children that are not married yet, you might want to ask them to watch and then to talk about it. So there's a lot of good that can happen. So last thing, at 9:45, that's about a half an hour from now, we here in the building will stop. Buzzy will come up and we'll sing a couple of songs together. And for you who are not going to be able to stay for our 10:15 service, you can go into the room that is set up in the lobby and you can take your communion there. It will be there. So we'll be done in here about 9:45 and online. And so that's the format. Anybody got a question about that? Is that as clear as I can be? Hopefully so. Okay, so I want to start off with this question. And you guys have to help these guys. One of these days we're going to be able to have live comments that will show up from people online. So we're working on that too. But for now, it's just going to be in here. My first question to start with is, why do people get married? If you want to make this really personal and you feel like you can answer it out loud, why did you get married? Some of you have only been married, less than 10 or 12 years. We've got an old married group in here for the most part. So think back. Why? Why did you get married? Can you remember? Don't get stage fright now. Don't do it. Jeff.
I was at a point where I was just loving life and I was doing a lot of traveling and I thought, I really want someone to share this with.
Okay, that is like a noble reason to get married. He was, if you guys didn't hear online, he was living his life and wanted and enjoying it and wanted somebody to share it with him. David.
Because she wouldn't move in with me.
I love that. David said because she wouldn't move in. That's good. Good for her, David. Why else? Am I?
Two parts.
Two parts. Doug.
One agrees with the first part. I can't imagine living life without having somebody to share it with. But you can't really live much of life without having somebody to share what you're doing with. The second part goes where he was, sex.
Which is kind of the same thing. Okay? Somebody to share sex with, right? Okay, Doug. Yeah, sharing life together. It's a huge deal. Anybody got something different of why you got married? Okay, I'm gonna say it differently than what Doug said. Slightly different. I grew up in a really conservative kind of church setting where we were taught, and I believe rightfully so, we were taught that sex was something that you reserved for marriage. And so Wanda and I started dating. We were 15 years old. Didn't want to wait any longer. And so that was the answer. It was just the answer. And I am not embarrassed to say that. Doug's not embarrassed to say it. David, you're not embarrassed to say it. That is part of the relationship. But if we who have been part of conservative circles, that was what we were taught. And some waited and some didn't. And that's kind of the nature of things. Anybody else? Reason that you got married? Look, I'm guessing that you know more than what you are willing to say right now. But one of the things we have to realize about marriage is that marriage, or some form of it, exists in every culture. Marriage isn't an American thing. It is not just a Hebrew thing in the Bible. Cultures marry. They look different from culture to culture, but they still have the same elements to them. I think for many of us here in this country, we entered into marriage, at least in some part, because that was the expectation, is that you grow up and you get married. I don't think this is necessarily true for most state universities. I don't hear it being taught that way, but if you happened to go to some kind of a Christian school, a Christian college, it is often in those colleges, it is openly talked about that the reason why young women go to that school is to find a husband. It is stated out loud. I don't know if it's stated out loud on a university campus, but I suspect it might be. That's what you do, because that's the expectation for, Gary.
I went to Ozark Bible College, and the other name for it was Ozark Bridal College.
Okay, we're going to say this out loud online for the world to hear. It's Ozark Bridal College. Gotcha, Gary. I like that. I think that there is, in our culture, there is I don't feel it or sense it nowadays the way that I did when I was younger. There seemed to be a huge amount of pressure on women to get married, or it was awful if you entered into your 20s and 30s and somehow you were not married by then. You know, that there was something fundamentally wrong with a woman who was not married at that point. Now, what was awful about that whole line of thinking, that apparently it was okay for men to play the field, but women were supposed to get married. We have a flawed system. We really do. And you all who have young girls in your home, you have had to fight through some of those stereotypes, or you are fighting through them now. I think the fight sometimes is harder with young men, to teach them a proper way to live in our culture. So let me ask this. You all are experienced at marriage, most all of you. You're experienced. What have been some of the advantages other than partnership? What are some advantages of marriage? Ooh, it's really bad if you sit here in silence on this one. Okay?
Friendship, confidant,
Okay?
partner.
Yeah, the partnership is a huge deal of having somebody there. But are there any practical benefits for being married other than sex, Doug?
You have a brain buddy.
A brain
A brain buddy.
A brain buddy.
You can think through stuff with
Yes.
somebody else, because if you think through it by yourself, I'd always end up on the wrong side of everything.
Do you refer to Cinda as your brain buddy?
Fish and Sunday.
Okay, good. Good. Melanie?
I mean, you're pooling all your resources, so you're only paying one house mortgage and you're paying.
It should be a financial benefit to be married. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way, but it should be. Yeah, you pool your resources. It should be cheaper for two to live together rather than just one. It doesn't always work out that way. Any other advantages? Children.
Grandchildren.
Okay. Now here's the point. Okay, because I want to push you all to think a little deeper. You can have children and grandchildren without being married. You can have partnership without being married. You can have a brain buddy. You got fish, okay? So you got two. What are the benefits of being married?
So we've had custody issues, and when you live separately, it really stinks.
Okay.
When you're not raising kids together, it stinks.
Any of you that are having to do any kind of blended family issues, or you have friends that are doing that, the custody issues can be so horribly complicated. And, some kids come out of it okay, and some kids really struggle with it. But that's the way it is. Other advantages?
You have someone to tell you when you're being stupid.
That's kind of in the brain buddy thing, but yours is more specific, Jeff. To be told that you're stupid, that's good. Yes, Buzzy.
When something really good happens, there's the first call. When something really bad happens, there's the first call.
Yeah. Yeah, and Buzzy, you and I, we've talked marriage before, and so to be able to have those conversations within the context of this lifetime covenant promise that we make to our partner, those conversations are different, especially when you have to have the difficult conversations and the person isn't going to bolt, just because you're having the difficult stuff. There is great confidence in that. So there are things that are unique in marriage that are uniquely beneficial, and we don't want to forget those. In fact, we want to end up magnifying them in some way. Do you think that most people who are married really want a better marriage? Now that's a little bit rhetorical. You don't need to answer that, but I want you to think about it. When you peel away the veneer of your marriage or of yourself and you look a little deeper inside, do you want something more than what you have? Do you want what you have to be better than what it is? Well, my suspicion is that most married couples don't. My suspicion is that most married couples just don't even think about it. That it is so easy in our married lives to establish routines, and we evaluate the worth or the value of our marriage by the success of those routines that we go through and the amount of resistance that comes our way in those routines. Somebody state back to me what I just said.
If it's working, don't fix it.
Say it louder, Beth.
If it's working, don't fix it.
If it's working, don't fix it. I have ordinarily, this is not true across the board, but it is true in the majority. Majority of marriage counseling that I do, one partner over the other has to be convinced that the marriage could be better and they need to work on it. Very seldom do both come in and go, help, uniformly. One spouse is dissatisfied. The other one goes, it's okay. Well, the spouse that is dissatisfied sees that it could be better and desires it to be better. The other one says, it's fine the way it is. Why are we rocking the boat? And I got to tell you, that is true for nearly 100% of all of the marriage counseling that I do. And so somehow moving both partners to this spot where they both want something better than what it is part of what marriage counseling is about. It's even harder when neither spouse wants to take action on it. Marriage counseling usually ends up happening when a couple hits a wall and it has created a larger problem. Why is it that people don't raise their hand early on and go, I got a really good marriage. Can somebody help me have a great one? Why don't people do that?
Ignorance.
Ignorance?
Sometimes you don't know it can be better.
You can't even picture it being any better. Look, we don't scream at each other. I mean, come on.
It's better than our parents.
There you go. I was hoping that we would hear that one. Most of us end up evaluating our own marriages by comparing it to somebody else. The biggest comparison would be to our own parents, if our own parents maybe had trouble. And we say, I'm way better than my parents are. Don't rock the boat. Or we compare our marriage to so-and-so's over there. One spouse goes, can we get help in our marriage? We go, have you seen them? Why are you complaining? The thing that I want you to grab onto here, and this is the part that comes from 45 years, but it didn't take 45 years to figure this out, is that what you have in your marriage right now can be way better than than what it is. And I don't care if you're Doug and Cinda, or Mike and Wanda, or somebody brand new. What you have, wherever your spot is now, it can be way better. Now, it doesn't get way better if you just start doing the things that Wanda and I do. In fact, some of the things that we do in our marriage, I would tell you right up front, don't do it. It works for us. We've had people come in our house and see some of the interactions that we have, and they go, really? Really? And we go, well, yeah, it works for us. So it's not a matter of taking a list of, a to-do list that somebody else has and applying it. I just want you to be open to the possibility that wherever your marriage is at right now, there is something out there that it is better than you could ever imagine. Is better than you can ever imagine. And you can say right now, well, my spouse won't cooperate. Don't worry about that right now. We can focus on some other things right now. You just have to believe that there is something better than what you have. Because I have found that people you get to a point that you don't even think about it and you don't really care much. It just begins to be something where you're going, I got to deal with my kids. I don't have time to deal with my marriage. After the kids get out of the house, then we can work on our marriage. Now, let me tell you something. After your kids leave the house, you're going to fill that time in with other stuff if you're not careful. Because you go, oh, look at all the time I have. I'll do this, and I'll do that, and I'll do that. Working on your marriage is something that can be done now and should be done now. That's what I want you to walk away with today. To be able to have that, motivation in your life, here's where today's challenge is going to come from. It comes from what you actually believe about marriage. I want you to think deeper. Marriage is both a human institution and a divine relationship. Okay, are you with me? You can get married and not know God at all. People who are not Christians, people who are not Muslims, people who are not Hindus, people who are they're not something that has some religious base to it, they can still get married. And as a matter of fact, they can have good marriages. Growing up in my life, I had such a narrow view of Christian and non-Christian that I was sort of taught to believe that if you are not a Christian, you can't have a good marriage. That is such a foolish idea. Back in my day, in our day when we were young married, there was a favorite slogan that was passed around in churches. Some of you that are older will remember this. It said, "The family that prays together stays together." Have you ever heard that one? Well, what I learned, and you can call me sacrilegious or challenge my belief system here, is that when I looked at other families that I admired, many of them were not Christian. But I watched them with their families, and I watched the husbands and wives together, and there was something about their marriages and their families that were just awesome. But they didn't go to church. They didn't claim any belief in God at all. And I learned to rephrase that statement from the family that prays together stays together to the family that plays together stays together. Because these friends of mine, they would pile up all the kids in the neighborhood and they would go out camping together. They would get out in their boats and go out to the river, and they played and played and played, and there was love and there was food and there was... Now, were they perfect? No, they were not perfect. But I don't think that they were any worse off than a lot of the marriages that I saw in my own church. They had found something. So understand, marriage is a cultural institution that can happen anywhere, in any culture. But for you guys, I want you to believe, this comes from us, I want you to believe that there is something uniquely different about a marriage that relies on the power of God and the presence of His Spirit in our union. There is something very, very different about that. Marriage can be either primarily selfish or primarily selfless. Those are the choices, really, that we have to make. See, back in that original question, why do people get married? I think most people get married out of selfish reasons. It's what I'm going to get. It's what I'm going to get. And that attitude is in fundamental opposition to what it means to be a follower of Christ. And I want you to begin thinking about marriage as being something that is primarily selflessness. It is not what we get, but what we can give away. And marriage has this unique possibility every moment of every day to be able to give away and then to find life and purpose in it. There is no question in my mind that when Wanda and I got married, even as we were, Jeff, we were stupid. It wasn't just me. We were both stupid. The stuff that we did, I mean, we were 21. Do any of you have 21-year-old children? They're not very bright, okay? And you watch them, you look at them and go, oh dear, we were the same way. And yet we got married. And we made a bunch of mistakes when we were young. Things that we didn't think through, ways that we treated people, decisions that we made. But something that got poured into us when we were really young, and that I believed, we both believe this, is that we were better together than we were apart. I'm going to ask you this about you and your spouse. Can you say that? Can you say you are a better person because of the person that you are married to? And are they better because they get you? That's how marriage works. Favorite line that guys say all the time. I can tell you, I don't think I've ever heard a woman say this. Guys say it all the time. Oh man, I married up. You know, that's just a male defense mechanism for not changing and not getting better. So I'm going to praise my wife. I married up. She's way better than me. Well, if she is, then let her rub off on you. Let her make you better. Don't just sit around and say, oh yeah, she's way better than I am, and then go off and do whatever you want to do. Vice versa. Are you better together than you are separate? That, to me, is one of the most practical ways of evaluating our marriage. And if you go, well, I'm a little bit better because of him, well, tell him, you've made me a little bit better. I would love for you to make me a lot better. And vice versa. That's what partnership is. And that's what being a follower of Christ is. Do you see that? Marriage is primarily about what I bring to you. What I bring to you. And we don't think enough about that. What are you bringing? We have very little in the Bible, very little that tells us how to be married. Do you realize that? There are some commands that just say marriage, it talks about marriage, but there is not a blueprint for marriage that starts off with, this is how marriage is supposed to be. There are a few of them. The ones that say that need to be permanently marked on your heart. Probably the most profound statement about marriage in the Bible is found in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 31 and 32. It says this. This is the Apostle Paul quoting the Old Testament. He says, as the scriptures say, a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife, and the two are united into one. My guess is most all of you had some kind of a statement like that that was read in your marriage ceremony. You know, it was there. You didn't pay any attention to it, but it was stated there in some way. Shame on us if we don't read the next line. That line is very mystical and so forth, and we go, oh, it makes me feel good, you know, that thing. The next line, Paul says, this idea of a man leaving his father and mother and becoming united or joined with his wife, says this is a great mystery, but it is an illustration of the way Christ and the church are one. In our childishness, in our immaturity, in our 21-year-old know-it-all lives, Wanda and I had people that convinced us, spoke right into our hearts and said, your marriage needs to be a picture to the world of God's relationship to the church. People can learn about the love of God from watching your marriage. There. You now have a purpose for getting married. You go, oh, well, okay, yeah, you're right. I'm going to go and I'm going to be a preacher or something like that. No. That has nothing to do with my occupation or what we've chosen to do. That is the nature of the mystery of marriage for people who claim to follow Jesus. And that your marriage is to be an illustration of the way Christ and the church are one. We show people from our marriage what it means to be a follower of Jesus. That's what we get to do. That's why it needs to get better. That's why we can look at each other and go, I need to be better for you. Because there's something even greater at stake for those of us who call on the name of Jesus. Got it? Okay, that's an introduction. Fuzzy, you're going to come up. And for you guys at home, we're done. Look, there will be stuff online for you also. Did anybody check on your phone? Did a post come up? Look at that. It worked. Okay, so you got some questions that you can ask each other today around lunch or when you're sitting there before your favorite team plays football or at halftime or whatever. You can talk about your marriage a little bit. All right? So that's it. See you guys next week or see you guys at 10:15. And that's the way it is. We're going to sing, and if you want to participate in